Short answer, because they're not real. So you can't get them wrong. There's no mistakes. So experiment, take risks. A wonderful way to especially practice Toon Boom Harmony's node system, compositing tools, and effects on a project that has a broad sandbox of possibilities, yet with a solid goal. Long answer. Good, hello, welcome to an Onionskin stream. I hope everything is working. This is a new setup. There may be some issues. Testing out new format of performing tutorials live. So we're going to see how we go. All about teleporters today, as you would have seen. Very interesting methods because it's, as I said, there's no way to do it wrong. We're just going to be working with basic shapes in Toon Boom Harmony, working with the node system, building it up from there, seeing how many different types that I can make within the first hour or so, and then if all is going well, I'll sort of open up to the floor a bit more into a bit of a Q&A session, take suggestions and things like that, and sort of just see where we go for the following half hour or hour or whatever happens. If you're coming in and watching this video after the fact, please lean on the chapter titles along the timeline to try and find bits that interest you, or to skip ahead if I start to ramble on a little bit, which tends to happen sometimes. Anyway, I think it's time to begin. Welcome. Okay, Toon Boom Harmony, here we go. So, teleporters, very, very interesting. Please follow along if you like. I will do a couple of demo ones, and then I'll start introducing some things to start thinking about and hypothesizing when it comes to designing your own. So first things first, this is Harmony Premium 21 in particular. Here is the node setup, the standard node setup that comes with every file. Got a regular drawing layer there, the composite, the write, and the display. Inside, down in the timeline, I also want to point out the node library. This is going to be in a few different places depending on where your software is. Windows node library will get you to it. And we're going to be looking at the filter section mostly today. There's tons of stuff in here, lots of different ways to get it working. So the goal of the project, of the experiment, is simply to have a character appear or disappear in the flashiest way possible. Let's do it the easiest way first. First of all, we need a character of some description. I probably should have just grabbed the onion avatar or whatever at first, but, you know, just drew a little guy. Doesn't really matter how they are. It's going to be standing there. Whoa. This is what you get when things aren't edited. Apologies. Okay, cool. And then over in the color tab, a few different colors required. What do I need? Skin, shirt, and pants. There we go. Paint bucket to fill them in. Now I'm choosing a few different colors here so that when we get to having this character appear and disappear, we can see how the effect will react with different colors and things, different saturations, etc., etc. So first effect is probably the most simple, which is just having the character simply fade away. Fade into or out of existence. How do we do that? Underneath the main drawing node is going to be a transparency, like so. There it is. Guy fades halfway in and out. Whoa, how crazy. Oh, apologies, bear with me. I need to check on some live stuff. Because I'm using some new tools and I can't see everything that I typically do need to see. Oh, my thumbnails are busted. That's frustrating. And I also couldn't see my chat window. So I might try and repair that real quick while I'm here. Apologies. Because I want to have a proper thumbnail. But it's just got like a channel wide one. That's weird. We might just have to bear with it today. But I can see the chat now, so that's good. Welcome, one and all. All right, so animating a very basic teleportation is just animating a transparency in and out. That's probably not too crazy, is it? with the transparency in there. There's a little plus symbol here. Press that to open it up, and then in the very bottom left of the interface there's 3 little buttons. The one in the middle will open up the parameters, and we can see the current value of the transparency, 0 being fully opaque, 1 and 100 being fully transparent. And that can be animated, of course. So if that is set to 0, then I go out down the timeline a little bit, crank it down to 100, the character is simply going to fade away. All done. Well done. I think we can get something a little bit flashier than that. So let's try bringing in a matte blur, I think. So the matte blur node is a very interesting one. It's a bit of a red herring because you hear the word blur and think that it's made for blurring purposes, but its main use is for making everything a particular color, any color really, but it can only be seen within render view. So if I go over to the layer properties tab here, you can see the whole all of the settings, and at the bottom there's a great big white box. This is a color swatch, and if I select that and change it to something else, the whole character is going to turn red, but we can only see it in render view. Remember, in the camera view you got the 2 little buttons here. The blue flower is render view, the gray one is working view. And there we go, it has indeed turned completely red, and whatever color I set it to, everything changes to be that. So teleporters always turn a hologram blue for some reason. And there is a blur status here, so you can give it a blur, but I tend to mainly use it for changing colors of things. So consider for a moment if that was combined with the transparency, and then there was a raw thread of the character coming straight down to the composite. Hang on, I'm going to just name that character. So now as this fades away, right, so we can already, things are starting to get a little bit more interesting. If we were to have the character light up blue first over a number of frames, and then that was to fade away in its entirety, that's starting to feel a little bit more authentic already. So now I need to have the transparency effect both at the same time, because of course if the blue fades away, it just reveals the character again. Now I could have two transparencies, one in each, but I'm technically repeating myself. I want to try and avoid that if possible. So I'm going to bring the right and the display down, press Ctrl H to bring in a new composite, and put that underneath, hook them up like so. So now that these 2 threads have become one, I can use nodes now to apply something to more layers at once, more than one layer at a time. So another transparency here. This is Harmony, from Harmony 20 onwards. If you press enter, then you get a little shortcut box here. So I can bring up anything I want just by typing it in. So here we go. And now another transparency after it's fully lit up. I can animate that now fading away again. All right, so now it lights up and then disappears. But notice I get a very interesting phenomenon appearing here. His detail starts to show up underneath the blue, because both of those 2 layers, the regular thread and the blue one, they're both fading away separately. They're still being treated as 2 separate images. They need to be treated as a single combined flattened one. And the way that's done is by checking the status of the composite itself. Now, for anyone following along with this, it probably is going to be automatically flattened by default. That is the default. Your composites won't look like my one. They're currently set to pass through. If I go to layer properties for the composite by pressing the yellow box or going to the layer properties window, you can see that my mode is already set to pass through. And if I change it to bitmap, then it just becomes a solid block. So that's probably a topic for another day, but the bitmap composites, they flatten things into one single object, and then effects are applied to them as a unit, which is indeed what I want in this case. So it's lighting up blue and then fading away. Apologies, this is bothering me. I've got the all this color shining through. I think I need to fill that in. Sorry, it won't be a second. Paint behind. Hooray! All right, that's going to look a little bit nicer, and the whole thing fades away. All right, so you can see I'm hanging out in render view most of the time here. Most of these effects are only visible that way. Oh, hang on. I just realized that I didn't tweet that the live is out right now. Anyway, all right. So to carry on from here, we can bolster it up all the more with a glow or with a blur. What should we try? Maybe we can just use the matte blur again. After that sort of faded in, maybe at the same time, if I press the plus, I can get to the other parameters as well. If I keyframe the radius, and during this sort of lull period here, a few frames where nothing's actually happening, the radius is continuing to increase. Let's see how far it should go. Let's bolster it right up to 20. Maybe, but again, the character is starting to be revealed underneath. So I think what might look even nicer is alongside the transparency in this section down here, we get a glow. Glow is one of my favorites. There's got a couple of different modes to it. I can select use source color, and that will use whatever is underneath, which is probably what we need in this circumstance. Or again, it's got the swatch selector here, and we can make it glow all sorts of different colors. Let's see what happens with use source color and pump that up to 25 or something. Okay, looking all right. And that is static, of course, so we probably want that to fade in or increase its intensity or something like that along the way. Let's experiment a little bit. What if I put in another composite here? Got a second glow, and this one. Look at that. Look what happens when you get two of them. You get this really interesting stacking effect. If that was white, maybe? Gray actually worked all right, didn't it? Maybe we should do that. Or here's an idea. I'm going to make the one on the bottom a deeper blue and have that bolster right out to probably about 40 or so. And the one on top, that will be the lighter cyan like that, with a glow of about 10. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. Now we can do even more with this by adding in a node called the matte resize. The matte resize takes an object that already exists and then thickens it up, gives it an outline per se. So if I put it underneath the back glow here, bulk it up to 10. Oh, we're not going to see too much happening, unfortunately. Let's try this one. Still nothing? Oh, there it goes, before it gets glowed. Yeah, there you go. So back one gets way thicker. Front one gets way thicker. But I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to reduce that core by pumping it into the negative. So -5, -10. Ooh, that's looking kind of interesting. Okay. But, of course, this is going to be sitting here the whole time. So maybe the matte blur transparency should be going right down past these two. Something like that. Let me try it. Let's see what happens when that fades in. Oh, it's taking a moment to render now. Okay. Looking pretty interesting. How does that look with the character straight behind? So the glow envelops the character very nicely, but it never gets to the point where it fully washes him out. So how can we solve that? Because underneath, it is just that. Maybe it's time to actually get another transparency and have that one fade out early. Hang on, I'll do that one by duplicating this original one down here. Now remember the difference between copying and duplicating nodes. Very important. If I copy and paste this, move it up here, their keyframe is going to be shared with one another. They become clones. Let me change the viewing mode so you can see both of them together. So if I pick up that one, see how both keyframes sort of move together? So I want to be careful in this case to have a duplicate instead. Never use the word copy with Toon Boom. You want to either be saying clone or duplicate. In this case, we want to duplicate. So select that transparency, and in the top left of the node view, there's this little 3 bars here, this little drop-down menu. I go to nodes, duplicate selected nodes, and then holding Alt, I can slot that one in and adjust its timing to something a little bit more appropriate. Where do we want it? I'm going to pull it back to about here. So as the glow is fading in, the character will start to fade away. Hey, that's starting to look pretty nice. Cool. All right. So you can see how we can get carried away. And this is a relatively simple one. Because everything can be animated over time. I'm going to run a quick export of that so we can see and enjoy it. While that exports, probably time I actually interact with people just a little bit. Hello. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you could make it. Oh, so many real-life friends. This is great. We got Jorge here. Z's arrived. Greg's here. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for joining me and bearing with the technical hiccups while I practice with all my new setups and things. Animated GIF. Hooray. Go to desktop. Teleport 1. Oh, I forgot all the new shortcuts that I've been building. I can do this now. Whoa. I can zoom in and out. Did that work, by the way? I need to make sure that that's actually working. If not, I can zoom in and out like this. But I can't see that zoom. Only you can. So I'm terrified that I'm going to zoom in on something at some point and then forget that I'm zoomed in. Whereas this type of zoom, I can see it, but I'm not certain if you can. I'm pretty sure that's working. What else have I got? Anyway, oh no, I was typing in lots of numbers because of all my macros. Teleports to frame 1 to 30. That'll do. And then segment transition. Whoa. Look how fancy I am. All right, how did that turn out? There we go. Not too bad. Nice, simple little teleport effect. Now, let's start taking this a little bit further, and then we'll start a new one where I can start to introduce a little bit of creativity, where you can really branch this off into different paths. But hopefully already, if you follow along with this, I know I'm probably doing a little bit too fast to follow along with in real time if you're watching it live, but this is also intended to be a video you can watch back later, and then hopefully pause and experiment and branch off in different paths. Really get stuck into fiddling with these knobs and seeing what they do. I think it can be a common missed opportunity when working with these nodes to only treat them as settings. So you go into them and sort of plug in your initial parameters and forget that you can animate stuff over time. Every time you see one of these little blue spline buttons next to a parameter type, that's something that can be keyframed. If you press the plus button down here, you should see nearly all of them. So for example, the matte resize, the thing that we use to reduce the core of this character, that -10 there, I want it to shrink down even further over time as he fades away. So I'm going to keyframe that there, and then as it fades away, it'll get smaller and smaller and smaller. So let's pump it down to -20. How thin does it get? Let's try -30. Oh, okay. That's starting to look all right. And then we'll fade that off the edge. How does that go? Oh. Yeah, there we go. See that? So it starts to shrink down as it gets fainter. Let's make it way smaller. I want it to shrink down to literally nothing. There we go. Sort of bleeds away. That's fun. All right, let's start bringing in some extra shapes and stuff to this, because at the moment it is just dealing with transparency. It's just sort of fading in like it's nothing. It could be fun to have some sort of wipe effect, something like that. We'll build it on top of the one that already exists, or no. We'll start again. I'm getting a little bit too carried away. But before we do that, I want to show off how little effects like this, and this is why I love the teleporter exercise in particular, is because you can then store them. I can bring this together and use it again and again. So, because at the moment the character goes into both of these things, but if I replace that character with a composite in of itself, then it doesn't matter what gets plugged into here. This is almost a teleporter brush if I really want it to be. So let's like just do some squiggles, and then that would get teleported as well, or whatever. Like, unplug that, put a different character in. You get the idea. Especially if I was to take all of this and then group it. If I select all that, press Control G, and then said teleporter 1. Now I don't really need to care about what's going on in there. It's just sort of this drag and drop thing. Anything that I create and pop in there will perform a fade out teleport at that point in the timeline. We'll touch upon the retime nodes at the end on how you can summon this teleportation anywhere along the timeline, but that's going to make these like grouped module ones really powerful indeed. Rather than grouping them though, for the sake of this lesson, I'm going to be using backdrops instead. That's in the top left of the node view, insert backdrop. I'll change it. They'll probably all be a bit of a blue color. Teleporter 1. Just for the sake of being able to see the entire contraption from afar. We'll put that one aside, and let's start a fresh one. There we go. And before we even begin, I'm going to have 2 composites in between. So this is sort of like my play area. Anything that goes along this line is stuff that will come to this sort of effect. Oh, fantastic. We've got more friends arriving. Tim from Toon Boom. Have we met before? I'm not sure. Maybe we've crossed paths. But old Tony Teach, OG Toon Boom teacher there, from always been around. I hope you've been well. It's been some time. Okay. This next effect is going to be done with a bit of a wipe to it. I should change this color card from black as well, so you can see the outlines just a little bit. Maybe a super dark, like navy color like that, or purple. I don't know. So this one will have a new shape. I'll just call it rectangle. And on top of that layer, I'll have a green box that fills up a whole screen like these. There we go. And I think one of the most powerful things that Harmony has, which you don't really see in a lot of other compositing softwares, that especially when they're layer based, and this is one of the reasons why I can't even use Photoshop anymore, is the ability to have a shape be both a mask and an instance of itself at the same time. So, yeah, I'm sure I have. Sorry, Tim. But it has been a while. Hasn't it? Has it been a while? I don't know. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting flustered. I'm going to put a rectangle, a peg on top of the rectangle so I can pick it up with my transform tools and shift it down to about halfway, just so that we can see the effect in action before it starts working. I'm going to get a cutter out. Cutter is Harmony's main masking tool, and in my opinion, way more powerful. Because what I was saying, we can have it exist and it be masks at the same time. How it works is the ports in the middle is the thing that you want to be revealed, and the port on the left is the thing that you want to be masked away or into the thing. Hope that makes sense. So put that into there, and then unhook the rectangle, put it into the mask, and bang, there you go. Eats away from the character. The little picture of the little mask itself can be double clicked and it will invert the mask. And now going back to this peg, just like it was before, I can sort of animate that moving up and down if we were to have the character sort of scan into existence like so, which can be pretty fun. Now, we can start applying effects to this thread. We can start applying effects to another instance of this thread. So say, for example, if there was a transparency occurring straight to the raw one like that, we could have 2 cutters. This is an interesting one. Like if the character came out to both of these and one of them was inverted, now it sort of looks like nothing's happened until we start applying some other nodes to it that mess with the the effect, right? So, I mean, transparency seems to be our go-to at the moment today, but that's how I could apply half the transparency to something and not something else. Let's have a look at some of the other color correction nodes, though. There's tons of them now. It's really quite luxurious. We finally got, in the last couple of years, color curves and color levels. These are probably like the main two ones from Photoshop and After Effects that wasn't available here yet. So now with those, you can do pretty much any kind of color correction that you really want. But for the sake of this, the color scale is probably the most efficient. If you've ever used curves before, hang on, I'll give you a little demo. It's not like we're running out of time. Color curves is probably one of the most powerful ways to deal with contrast and color correction and things like that. But dealing with charts like this, it can be kind of fiddly. So they take a little bit of practice to be able to get the sorts of results that you want. Whereas color scale, if you know what you're going for, it can be pretty quick to sort of just hammer it out. So if I want to pump up, more blue, as we've been doing, up to 2. So it's a multiplier. So, it's 1 by default. 1 times 1 is 1. 2, there'll be twice as much blue as before. Or does it max out at 2? Oh, maybe it maxes out at 2. My bad. Whereas 0.5 will be half the amount. 0, no blue at all. So all the greens and reds show up a lot. So if I combine that with taking away some of the reds and the greens and things like that, there we go. So now there's a lot of blue showing through, but it is happening on this mask level. As you're building, as experimenting, and it slowly just grows and gets away from you, because I know a lot of people see very complicated node networks for the first time and it can be kind of blown away by it. But hopefully by doing exercises like this, you can see it's really not so bad. It starts simple. You don't plan a big complicated thing from the start most of the time. You sort of just end up there by accident. But if something gets away from you and you need to kind of unpack and see what's happening, 2 main ways to do it that I really like. The first is just turning layers on and off. I can't remember what the shortcut is for that by default. It's A and D on my one. Maybe Tim or Z will confirm. But turning nodes on and off like this will sort of show the effects activate and deactivate. But probably my favorite way, especially from a troubleshooting perspective, is to get extra displays out. That's done by pressing Control Y to generate a display node. They also exist just in the node library by typing display, of course. Now, there is one display there by default, but you can have as many as you like. And they're a really, really powerful way of isolating certain areas of your scene and sort of dissecting them, really. So up in the top toolbar, there is a drop-down called Display. If you don't have it there already, right-click and go to Display until it appears. And this becomes a drop-down menu of all the displays that exist in the scene. So if I choose Display 2, the whole thing goes blank because it's not connected to anything, right? But if I start plugging it into stuff, this becomes a really efficient way to sort of parkour around my scene and see how different bits work in isolation before they all come together. So if we were to work chronologically down this chain here, we've got our green rectangle that goes up halfway, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, what happens at this cutter? Oh, it's revealing the character. That's interesting. Why is it doing that? Right, yeah, that's where the character... Like, see what I mean? Like, if you forget what port does what, you can sort of work your way up and down each thread and see what happens as they take effect. So, of course, the color scale, that's when it comes a tint of blue. And this composite is where everything sort of comes back together again. And then finally, at the very bottom, it just adds the color card and we get a slight tint of blue. Hooray. Now, as we keep building, I could access my old one again by having another display there, etc., etc. Okay, so we've got an effect coming into play here, and will slowly animate over time if we choose it to do so. Ooh, pardon me. Excuse me. All right, so my rectangle, the original green rectangle, I only drew it on one frame and then it disappeared. I forgot to extend its exposure out all the way. And also keep an eye on where keyframes lie as well, because I was just picking up and moving it around willy-nilly when I really should be taking more caution to animate that thing properly. In working mode, however, because it's only revealing an effect and not itself, it's difficult for me to tell what I'm doing. So, what can I do? Well, sometimes I usually just grab an extra raw thread of that shape and send it right down to the bottom just for the sake of being able to pick up and move it over time like this. So 10, 20, like that. And I'm going to apply heavy ease to it as well using the drop down on the left. And zoop, there we go. So if we look at that on render view, of course it's still going to be showing the green, so I've got to unhook that first, revealing the blue underneath. And then the character will slowly turn blue as it goes. So still looking a little bit plain. Let's fancy it up a little bit by having the color card be blurred, color scale be blurred. I'm just going to use a regular blur radial this time. Pump that out to about 20. Okay, now here is a really interesting place where we can talk about the importance of the order of the node system. I know I've sort of just like jumped in and started making stuff from the beginning without giving the general, this is what nodes are and how they work. But keep in mind that the flow is always a top to bottom, left to right kind of thing. Layers are stacked furthest most to the left, so this thread is at the top of the layer, and if I reshuffle them, that will become lower down. You see how it's reflected down there in the timeline, like so. The order of where the blur goes is important. It makes a difference. Let's see what happens if I pull it out and then start plugging it into different threads. If it goes straight into the rectangle as a mask before it goes in, you can see it's blurred out just the edge, revealing the hard edge of the other instance behind it. If it goes in on the main mask, then it's the opposite. Blurs the character with the blur, but a hard masked edge. If we go over here, it'll be the opposite. You can sort of see the edge of that character being blurred in the background there. The character itself. Probably nothing too surprising so far. This is probably the most interesting one though. Or maybe it isn't. Oh, it is a little bit. You can see how the blur is ever so slightly different, whether or not it's before or after the color scale. But probably what I want most is this. I want it to blur the edge of the effect as it goes up. But I've of course hit a problem, that it's revealing the other masked version of the character underneath. Now I could duplicate that and have it in both, but it's probably not very wise. The eagle-eyed amongst you probably would have noticed something before we got to all of this, and that is this. A seam. Seams are ugly and the bane of every rigger's existence. They're something that don't show up in working view at all. They only show up in render view. I intend to probably do an entire session just talking about seams eventually. But basically it's a gap that is less than a pixel in size. Really, really, really small. But it's enough. You can still see it. And they appear when you've got an instance like this. We've got the same character. It's being chopped by the same mask. One is inversed. So they're right up against each other. But the anti-aliasing sort of reveals this little gap. And the best way to get around it, honestly, like there's a few fail safes in there, but we won't really get it, like the increase opacity and stuff, but we won't get into that today. The best practice really is to build in such a way that you avoid it. And the way to avoid it here is that I don't need the bottom half of the character to disappear in order to show the blue. I might as well just have it be the whole character going into the background. It doesn't matter. It's the same effect. And in fact, in this case, it looks better. It's a cleaner node network, and now I get a clean mask as the blue envelops his entire being. Now, I think I do want another blur, though, underneath the color scale. That is probably a way, way smaller. Maybe about 3 or something. There we go. So you can get some quite interesting results with basic shapes. Consider how we could get a bit of a ripple going maybe by just altering that shape. This is where I like to duck into the drawing view, because it sort of gets all the nonsense out of the way, all of the effects and other characters and things like that. And I can just sort of focus on this, because now I want to get a sort of ripple coming in. So a couple ways to do it. A part of my first instinct would be to have it on a separate layer and have it on a separate layer and then mask it in. But maybe I'll do this one on a vector level. By just selecting everything and then in tool properties flattening it, and then use select by color to remove the red again, giving me that sort of look. So that's going to come up like so. Probably not quite high enough anymore. Whoops. Let's pull those vertices down well enough so that this can still go all the way up. Yeah, with room to spare. There we go. All right, whole character's turning blue. Great. Okay, what can we do next? Let's see if there's any suggestions from the audience happening. Venman says, I'm still using Harmony 17. What is the difference between the latest version when it comes to rigging? And Tim Giovanni from Toon Boom says, Harmony 21 has a lot of things. The most important is core build improvements. It's faster and more stable. It has a new rig modules that like the Rigid Deformer. The Rigid Deformer is fantastic. I might give a quick demo of it once we reach the end of the main session here, if you're interested in seeing it, but I probably will do a larger one on it later on as well. I think that was it. That was the only question. Cool. In that case, I'll move on. Yeah, but each version of Harmony typically does have quite big improvements to just performance and stuff, which is really nice, I think. Like, I'm usually pretty happy when there's a release that is almost exclusively back-end, just making stuff that already exists work nicer than before. And then the next year there'll be like some other big gimmicky thing that's really quite fun, and we all have fun sort of unpacking and exploring how it all works and how to push it beyond. One of the big ones this year was the retiming suite, which I think could really be a game changer. But sometimes it takes a good 6 to 12 months before we really start seeing that those effects get pushed as far as possible. Because it can be a little bit risky to do it on production. Rather like this is kind of the place to do it, where we're sort of experimenting and seeing how things click together. You want to make sure it's tried and tested before giving it to a group of 30 animators and making it as standard. All right, so I want to try, now this is going to be an experiment. I haven't rehearsed this bit, using a refract and see if I can get the character to wobble based upon the shape that I've made here. So this is it. And it takes, if I remember right, areas of transparency and then causes like a refract ripple effect as a result. So let's see what happens if I put it in underneath this blur here. Oh, it needs a mask as well, doesn't it? So I think it would be... Oh, let's see what happens. It's been a few years since I've used it. Height and intensity. No, I need to do a little bit more. It needs to be this character, who is raw, being refracted by the blur of this. There we go. Look at that. So it'll look a bit cooler in motion, but as that goes up, you can see it starts to warp, like it's sort of underwater effect. And it takes place through areas of transparency. And, you know, like this shape doesn't have transparency normally. He's just going straight from on to off. So you can see without the blur there, it's just sort of this hard edge, like super intense for a single pixel. But with the blur, we've created our own transparency, haven't we? There's a fade in, fade out effect that exists, and our refract can work with that. So this is where it gets super, super intense, that the core building blocks of the node system is pretty cool, but where it gets psycho is when you start imagining how you can combine them together to create effects that straight up did not exist before. Yeah. Let's give that a little bit of an export, and then I might show off one of my favorite examples of when it comes to creating a brand new effect, and then see if we can implement that into one of our teleportations. Zeno and Jorge seem excited by that result. Me too. I'm glad it worked because it's been a while since I used it. There we go. So it's subtle, but that's definitely given it a little bit more oomph than it just being like a light, and that's it. Okay, so demonstration of new effects. Transition time. Whoa. So here is a... oh no, well, let's do it to the main character. Why not? I'll get one more instance of him. Put it off to the side. Now, we had a look a moment ago at the standard glow. So if I wanted to glow it outwards, yeah, like this, and we'll maybe make it a slightly different color this time, up by about 20. Now, say I just wanted to have like a perimeter glow, right? So I could have it stacked like this, where the character is behind, or I could rearrange it so that the glow is on top. But what if I wanted it to be like true, like an actual rim light, and it was like cutting away from the character itself? We've seen all the tools we need to be able to do that so far. It is, of course, just a standard cutter. And the cutter is being trimmed away from an instance of itself from before it was glowed, giving us an outer edge. Pretty nice, right? Now, what if I wanted to have an inner glow? Inner glow is a pretty standard default that we see in many other programs. I remember being quite perplexed when I first started learning Harmony at the fact that inner glow is not an option. It's not there by default. And I thought, oh, hang on, that's a little bit limiting. But then I thought, well, hang on. We're given all of the standard building blocks, aren't we? We can make our own inner glow. We can build it ourselves. So how would I do that? Well, I need to do the opposite of what I've just made. So I need to create an inverse. So I'm going to get a color card out. A color card is literally just a really, 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 really big rectangle. Yeah, so it doesn't just change the background. It's physically back there. If I go into perspective view and select the thing, like, look what happens when I start rotating this. Why can't I rotate this? There we go. Look at that. See them cascading off into the distance? Like, it's insane. But I quite like using color cards for this reason, because I'm not going to accidentally reach the edge of the rectangle. They are, however, in the background. So if I bring the character back in there, you can see how it's like physically back there a little bit. So I need to change the color cards offset Z from 12 back to 0. And now they're level, which makes this perfect for just being able to be used as a regular shape. And if I'm using it as a regular shape, I'll put the other instance of the glow off to the side for now. Oh, hang on, I'll do the same thing I did before, where we put a composite in there, and then it just becomes a thing that you can use. There we go. There is the outer glow effect. And now I'm going to use the color card itself as a mask this time. So if the cutter goes in there, and the character is the matte, now we have an infinitely big square with a hole in it. Pretty neat. So let's get an instance of that yellow glow, put it in underneath, turns the whole card yellow, and blurs the edges. So we have the effect of an inner glow functioning now, but there's all this bleed around the edges. So we just need to remove the card, leaving only the glow. Pretty well the same as the other method now. One more color card underneath and trim away from itself, inverted. There we go. Look at that, inner glow. Fantastic. So once again, I'll get a composite out to combine that so I can put any character inside. Or maybe we can combine both of these together. So rather than going to two composites, let's have them both come from one composite, like that. And then they come back together again. And there we go. Look at that. Inner and outer ring glow combined into one easy, existable effect. It'll always turn it yellow, and it will be for any shape that we put in there. So just like everything else, this is basically a brush that we've made. So I'm going to say a new drawing layer called Glow Brush. Put that into the composite, and let's start painting with it. Whoa, look at that. So that means this can be combined with traditional animation. Any of the pegs and things like that sliding around. Because they go into the composite together, like if this glow brush had a peg on it and started sliding around, you can see as it overlaps with the character, it updates that glow accordingly, and it just sort of works. And then don't forget that all of these parameters inside, they can all be animated over time as well. So if I were to give just one more little tweak to this, let's go down to the glow, and then let's keyframe the colors. So they're in 3 separate channels, the red, green, and blue, like this. So keyframe the 3 of those. But once that's done, in layer properties, I don't have to like manually adjust RGB. Like after it's been keyframed, I can just come over to this swatch and be like, okay, change from, yellow to cyan over time, like that. I should probably keyframe them all just in case. But now you'll see over time that will change from yellow to cyan like that. Once things have been keyframed, clones are functional. So I'm going to swap this glow out for the instance of the other one. And now they will both always animate together. So if I give this one more color shift over here, let's change just one of them to purple. There we go, they both do it. So now we've got all of that just sort of cycling through the spectrum, and it can sort of just happily do that. Excuse me while I refresh the tech and stuff. Okay. Any questions about that before I move on to turn this into a teleport and maybe even combine it with what we've already done? I should probably tidy it up a little bit. Always good to keep the node networks tidy. This, remember, will be available to Patreons and stuff later on. I upload all the working files and things later. So if anybody wants to head on in and have a tinker around with the stuff that already exists here, yeah, the link to that, description, blah, blah, blah. Hooray. Okay, now I'm going to have a quick tidy up of this set. If you click on a string, a little dot appears in the middle. This is a waypoint if you click and drag it. Just to be relatively clean, it's nice to not have all of these points overlapping each other all the time. And I probably wanted these to be overly labeled just for the sake of those who want to come in and explore these later. They're relatively easy to navigate. The most important thing is that you yourself can read what you've built. And if you end up handing it off to a team, that they can read it too. However, keep in mind that if you open up one of these files 6 months later, you will have forgotten what's inside. So you want to be able to get yourself back up to speed as quickly as possible when returning to an old document again. Okay, so that's the ring glow system. I'm going to duplicate that and put it off to the side and see if we can't turn this demo into a teleport of its own. So maybe we get another raw instance of the character on top. No, underneath. Because it goes either way, doesn't it? And I reckon we could have both of those fade in, and then the inner core of it have the ripple. Now I might be getting a little carried away here, but let's see how it works. Here I go. I'm going to combine both of those into a composite so that the whole thing can have a fade in over time. I was thinking about another transparency for a moment, but let's have the glow radius tween in. So I'm going to grab the colors and push them out a few frames so that we have the opportunity for the radius to come in over a few more. So it's concludes at 20. I wanted to start at 0. So then we get that. So it fades in and cycles colors at the same time. Pretty fun. And also the intensity needs to change as well. Starts off at 0. And by only about frame that, intensity of 1 back to normal. Just so that we don't have that gross bleed edge there at the start. There we go. So that fades in. Sort of oscillates for a bit. Now let's get the ripple rectangle effect to come back. How should we do that? I want that to be underneath. Come on, Ripple, where are you? Combining a lot of stuff together. It's probably going to start to slow the computer down in a moment. There we go. Look at that, warping the character around while it does the glow. But that's taking from a different instance, isn't it? So let's have the refracted one go through the glows. Is that going to wobble the glows around too? I'm probably making the thing just a little bit too intense now. Yeah, I might leave that off just for the moment. Because the ripple upwards, that's going to appear on top of everything else. But rather than at a color scale, it needs to be... Hang on, I'm sorry. This is not becoming a very followable tutorial anymore now, is it? Okay, I'm gonna rip this stuff out. Bring the whole contraption down to a duplicate of it so I can combine them properly. So we get refract character comes in raw like so. Never have node chords go upwards. Is big no. It's confusing to look at. It's bad. All right. So refract goes there. It goes underneath the two glows. In fact, it goes underneath the two glows. Oh, have you stopped working? No, we're just a few frames behind. Okay, up it comes. And instead of a color scale, I wanted it to be the glow when it is not masked. So I take another clone of this one and replace that and pop it there on top. There we go. Cool. All right, so that envelops the whole guy now. What happens if the color scale exists as well, actually? Okay, cool. And then character himself, the main one, needs to blur out completely to disappear. Regular blur. Or, no, even better idea. Because if we're doing the whole ripple thing, let's use that mask to our advantage. I'm going to take this shape, modify it a little bit by copy pasting it, flipping it upside down, and just getting a replicant of those strips at the bottom so that it can continue out through the top. But this one is going to cause the entire thing to disappear, like the entire thing to disappear. So in that case, cutter, then rectangle envelops, and then needs to whip away again. Time to get that extra display in there so I can see what the heck I'm doing. Oh wow, that's really tall, isn't it? That's really tall. That is way taller than it needs to be. Up it goes. All right. Slides up off the top like that. And at this point, it needs to get the entire character to vanish. Now we're going to see a couple of interesting things take place here now. Because first of all, it's just going to be the regular ripple leaving again. Whereas we want it to remove everything. The whole character disappears. So it needs to be getting masked away by this blur, like so. Like so, I say. There we go. So that'll work at having it vanish like that. But of course, the problem is that this is a master, right? Like it's going to be removing the character at the beginning as well, when we want them to already be there. So this is going to bring me into a completely different concept now, which is also a topic for another day, but I don't care. I'm going to talk about it now as well. And that's the image switch node. One of my favorites. This thing is like the composite, as in it combines many threads into one, but rather than rendering them all as a single thread, it only reveals one of the chosen threads. So if I pop in regular one here, our master cut one there, and then out to the display, there's now two inputs, and this image switch can only render one or the other, and the one it chooses is animatable, basically. So I'm going to go find that in my timeline, open it up, and the port index here, that's the animatable parameter. So I just need to find the point from before it starts rippling upwards again, which is around, where was it? It's about here. Oh, there it is. That's fully bright. So at this point, it animates from 0, and then the next frame, it animates to 1. So it switches from going this path to this path in that moment. The 0 and 1 can be a little bit difficult to remember at first because it works from the right to the left. This is port number 0, port number 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Okay, so let's see how that one turned out. It's about 50 frames long, I think, 55. Teleports 3. Oh, that was quick. That was too quick. That was quicker than I bet it actually was. Let me double check. Oh, really? There's no way that it did it that quickly. Yeah, it's blank the whole time. That's because it is possibly on the wrong... What have I done? Why is that not working? Well, I do apologize. We may not get to see that GIF come out today. I might export it as a MOV just in case. Display 3. All right, that's taking a more believable amount of time. Meanwhile, comments. This is Harmony 21. 22 does not exist yet. And we are practicing teleport animation. just animating teleporters. Mainly, it's just one of my favorite exercises because there's just tons and tons of different ways to experiment within the nodes and within the compositing tools to create all sorts of different effects to make characters appear and disappear. All right, let's see how it turned out. Teleport 3. Did it go to my... Oh no. Where did it go? Teleport 3. Here it is. Off it goes. Yeah, it turned out all right. Okay. How long have we been going for? We are about an hour in. And I could definitely keep going. But now is the time where I'm totally open to any questions or suggestions. Preferably on topic when it comes to animating teleports or any broader composition and effects style stuff. We're able to combine quite a lot of different tricks and traits with that one. We've got some masking going on. We've created some brand new effects with the inner and outer glow. We even got an image switch in there. Things change color over time. And there's only 2 drawings. There's the character itself and a green square. So unless there's any questions or suggestions, I might do one more. Might do a more flickery, exciting style one. I'm getting a little tempted to start drawing some like lightning and things, but I preferably do want to keep this to more of a compositing style lesson rather than hand-drawn teleports and things like that. I really wanted this third one to be made from suggestions, but no one's offering any. That's okay. I'll take a new instance of the character. And once again, a new setup like this. So if anyone wants to give this a crack in their spare time to try and make their own teleport effect, I'd love to see them. Please tweet them at me, and then maybe next week or the week after, I'll compile some nice ones together and sort of show them off. Actually, the Discord channel is probably the best place to go. That's in the description as well. There's a dedicated place there for uploading stuff that you've made based on videos like this. All right, so I'm on display 5 this time. Let's see, what is another way that we can do this? What would be the base spec of the computer to achieve this? It's not too much. It might take a little bit longer to render maybe, but like one of my RAM sticks is dead. I am operating at 50% RAM right now and it's fine. So yeah, you can definitely get by. I was able to achieve these sorts of effects back when I was just working from a laptop. I had like a 2009 iMac that was running up until only a couple of years ago, and this stuff was still relatively okay. Some things would get pretty intense and take a few minutes to render, but that's because I really like to push these pieces as far as they can go. If you're sticking to just drawings and a few glows, you'd be okay. Okay. Now, this time, let's have the character appear. Maybe have some flashes and stuff. I don't know. The important thing is that it's modular. That I can pack it in and I can apply it to any character I want. So let's see. If I was to have something flash or appear in. Should we go for a more traditional approach this time? Maybe we should. I'm not quite as crash hot at these ones, but we'll give it a go. I'm going to use a green to rough with. And I'll try and do it pretty quickly. But the key is basically to make it kind of stroby. So let's have over a few frames. I'll turn the onion skin tool on as well. So as this circle grows and grows and grows, then maybe shrink a little bit, have it be gone for a frame, have it be back for a frame, have it be gone for a frame, have it be back again. Oh, whoops, these need to be empty. So it's already pretty stroby. Maybe I should make that blue just so it shows up against the onion skin better. Gets down smaller. And then massively bigger. Oops. Hold for a bit, deliberately drawing it each time to give it some wobble. So we'll get quite a different atmosphere this time with the sort of hand-drawn, crude look. That'll do. All right, and these last three here, they're starting to loop now. So yeah, those last five are all sort of looping. So I'm going to mark that one as a keyframe so I can copy and paste these a few times like this. So I can just sort of hold. And then I'm going to call that energy ball. And a new layer on top called lightning. Lightning is one of those things that you can either do really quickly or spend ages on it to take more time and care. Obviously, I'm going to do it a little bit more crude and loose for now, so that we get through it quickly. I'm just putting it on a different layer though, so that if I want to recycle any of these, I can do so. If you want an easy way to draw lightning, now it's a little messy, but the trick I found is just to hold your pen super loose. Just embrace the natural wobble of your hand. And give it lots of line thickness variation. All right, that's probably enough for now. Oops, I'm gonna recycle those same three again. Then they'll be in twos. So by separating those layers, I can get a little bit more flexibility. Oh, except for that one. Gross. Don't want them appearing there. Yeah, so with these more traditional methods, there's probably not as much to talk about. So, I don't know, chat amongst yourselves or something. May call it quits in a moment just to move things along. Maybe just one more shape. All right. With those holding on two, and then two more Okay. Yeah, it's a bit lame, but it'll do. Especially considering it's all on ones. And then let's get our character to appear in the middle somehow, or rather we need to start putting some effects onto the energy ball, don't we? What do we reckon? Just glows again, or something different? It will take a slightly different approach. We can get similar effects, and arguably probably even more powerful ones, by rather than using the glow, which is kind of a pre-packaged preset in a way, and instead use standard blurs with blending modes. So if this was simply blurred out to 20 or so again, and then there was another one on top that was only that, or maybe not even blurred at all actually. Let's try that. Raw one on top like that. Hang on now, let's put a matte blur maybe, so we can like make it brighter. Not that bright. There we go. And then we put some blending on it like this. So when the character is underneath it, there we are. We'll get some interesting effects. So let's sort of just scrub down them and see what we get. Overlay or, oh, hang on. Erase is kind of interesting. I wasn't expecting that. I end up just sort of defaulting to overlay and junk. Maybe it needs to be on the whole shape. Ooh, that one's all right. Vivid light could be fun. Screw it. Blending modes are there. They are quite good. But for now, I'm going to do something a little different. Yes, I remembered something that I wanted to show off earlier, but didn't do. And that was, let's have this time, the character itself sort of animates in and has a bit of a lighting effect change. So I'm going to get a color selector. Color selector, here it is. And have that, no, sorry, I apologize. I don't want a color selector, I want a color override. Override, the beefy powered up version of the color selector. This thing is nuts, has so many different settings in it. You can select colors and then tell them to become other things, or to be ignored, or to be included, and things like that. So I'm going to choose the black, send that over, and say new RGBA white. So this character is going to come through with white outlines. And I can tell other colors to simply not show up at all, or to do different things. I might do that. I might say render selected colors only and also send that black across. So we just get the white outlines there. And then have the regular instance of the character underneath like so. So then this outlined version can do a couple of different things. I think first of all, it will also have a blur on it. Maybe like 5 or so. Plus regular instance of itself. That one is, you can see the black outlines coming up underneath a little bit. So let's get a matte resize under there. Matte resize probably just bolstered to 1, or maybe even less than that, 0.5. How's that? Yeah, there we go. That's looking good. Sick. Okay, so without the character, that looks like that, which I think is kind of neat. And maybe the raw version is actually where we should be putting the blending mode, because then we can get the colors that exist to kind of just mesh well with the thing underneath. Yeah, see that? That's cool. But which one would be coolest? Oh, that could be fun. So most of them seem to be working on levels of opacity. I don't understand the algorithms of blending modes enough. Difference is neat. I've never really used that for something before. How are the old... Oh, subtract. That's nice. How do the old faithful ones look? Things like multiply and overlay. Overlay looks pretty dumb. Where's multiply gone? Multiply looks pretty dumb. Oh, multiply looks okay. But I really liked... Where is it? Where did it go? Difference, was it? Yeah, that one looks cool. I think I might use that. And then how do we switch between them? Should we just do it with the transparency and have the regular character underneath? Probably. And there should probably be another instance of the whole orb on top. But it's faded out a bit. Or something. Because like that's pretty strong. Like it's really kind of just showing up. But maybe if we kind of compress that. Oh, wow, look at that. It really changes when it's a bitmap versus a pass-through. I didn't consider that. What happens if it's a bitmap and then an overlay? Because that looks so stupid before. But no, okay. No, it's still dumb. Back to difference with you. Where did it go? There we go. All right. Sorry. Sticking with my gut. That's a pass-through. That's a thingy. Transparency on top. Pop that down to 50%. Yep, that's looking good. Maybe even less like that. Okay. Now to animate the dang thing. So how do we do that? Let's have... Now, obviously the character must be masked inside that sphere. Energy ball. Bang. Inside. Out you come. I feel like the character as well should actually animate in size a little bit. So not too massively. Let's say they start off down there like that. And they finish on a heavy ease out of 80. Bang. There we go. Now, of course, I still want this to be modular to move with other characters. And because pegs go above characters, that means I'm going to have to sort of like wedge it in between. And I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to swap it out with an apply peg transformation. This allows me to put peg movement underneath a character. So if this peg lives here instead, then I get to keep the ability to just plug whatever I want into the top and it will just work. All right, so up it comes. I think I need to fade his transparency in a little bit. So at this point, when it's that little, it should be off completely. But he should be pretty well fully existent by this point, I think. Whoa, not that existent. Goodness. There we go. And the teleport, the actual effect, it needs to sort of just dissipate at some point. Haven't really thought through how we want that to disappear. Should I get the ball to sort of just vanish or disappear? Maybe. Because it's still very there, still very strong. Do we fade it out or shrink it? Or animate it away? What do you reckon? Let's get the lightning ones from earlier. Paste reverse so that they sort of go back down on their own. And the orb, I think that needs to... honestly, I think it needs to get physically bigger and fade away. So I'm going to loop that again. Put a peg on it. And at around this point where the characters appeared, it will then suddenly get huge, encapsulate the entire screen like that, and fade out at the same time. So that's going to affect both instances. It's the energy ball as a whole. Line it up with those keyframes and go 100%, 0%, 100%. So now that should fade away, leaving the character behind. I guess that needs to actually affect the lightning as well. Let's get this lightning back here a little bit. And probably just put the transparency there. There we go. So the whole thing fades away. Possibly affecting that version as well. You need to be a bitmap to combine the lightning and the orb together, with a regular instance of the character existing in the background basically the entire time, because he comes into existence at around this point underneath everything else. So let's just have him suddenly exist then. So one last transparency that will right here go 100, 0, and there it is. Fade away. Okay, now that's interesting because you're meant to only reveal inside the orbs, and the orb doesn't exist anymore. So, oh wait, I'm so dumb. That raw thread is already going through all these effects. It needs to come straight from the character, right from the very top. Right here. So that has the transparency. Cool. So then the effect will dissipate as it gets bigger, leaving the character behind. Now, still missing something movement-wise. I reckon, like, as that's wobbling around, I reckon the character itself needs a little bit of a quake on it. So I'm going to take the this increased size peg that's happening, and I'm going to get a quake underneath. I love the quake. It generates movement, and it just goes nuts with it. Look at this. Bah. That's too intense. So what do I need to change on that? Apply on Z off. Don't want it coming forwards and backwards. Amplitude 0.3, I reckon. So it's, oh, that's still too intense. 0.2. How much jiggle is that? That's still a lot of jiggle. 0.05. Yeah, that's okay. 0.07. And then that turns off as well. So let's go inside those parameters. And then as it starts to fade out, probably by the time it's faded out, it would be off, I reckon. So maybe around here, you'll go down to 0. So therefore at the beginning, it can probably have a magnitude as high as, it's probably as high as 1, actually. How intense is that? Oh, that's very intense. I think we had it right the first time. 0.07. Was it 0.07 or 0.7? Yeah, okay, so maybe it could be as high as 0.1. There we go. Okay, I think this one might be just about there. Let's give it an export and see what we get. Teleport 4. Oh, hang on. Got to check what display we're in. Display 5, and it's about 60 frames long. Teleport 4. settings, and then it comes up. Where is teleport 4? Did you get exported? There it is. Shoo. Hey, not bad. Cool. All right. So we've made quite a lot of effects. So the last thing I want to talk about is to summon them. Let's have a quick look at everything we've made so far. Here's the first one, just a simple fade out. The second one we did had this little shimmer to it. We didn't actually quite finish that one because we combined it with the ring glow here, like that. And then finally we did something that was a little bit more traditional with the with that little orb. All right. So, all of these have a couple of things in common. The first is that I wanted all of them to be as modular as possible, like this one. I'll probably come back to the first one to demonstrate on it. Where is character? There we go. So by the time you go grab this from the Patreon or whatever, all of these will be in backdrops like this. I don't know if I'll do it live. It's probably not the best use of your time. But you'll be able to plug in any character and it will just play the effect. But when I used to build effects like this on a couple of gigs. And one of the tricky things about them was getting them to fire at different times. Like, it was great how modular it was to be able to just get the effect on screen, but it wasn't quite so easy being able to modulate the timing of it, if that makes sense. Because, you know, some of these have lots and lots of different keyframes going on, lots and lots of different layers. Where is our most complicated one? Display 3. Oh my goodness. Yeah, quite a bit of stuff. So if all of this needed to be grabbed and moved on later in the timeline, there is the risk that I would accidentally displace something and the timing would go skew-if. Now, you can collapse the timeline to a degree on a lot of this stuff and then pick up and move them in bulk. Now, that's all well and good. That will keep it all together. But it's still a little risky. But that's been the way that we've done it for always. But as of Harmony 21, there is a couple of extra nodes that are really going to help with this. In fact, it helps it so much that I'm going to pull all of the movement for this one back here at the start. I'm going to increase the length of the entire scene out to 150 or something, just so that I can show you how it works over a few frames. So the character will fade away, and then he'll fade away again and again and again. That's the idea. Maybe I should do this on one that has the ripple on it, so that we can see it in real time. Just need something that we can see, without having to be in render view. Bear with me. Let's go back to display 3 again. Yeah, that one we can see pretty clearly, and it's very complicated too. Lots of different parts going on, and it starts off right away, which is great. So what if I want this to play lots and lots of times? Or at least if I want it to start later. In between here, I'm going to go back to the node view again. And under the new timing section, there is one called retime. There's a couple of different features in here that I've talked about in some other videos already. But I haven't shown this before. Which is if I slap in the retime node and go down to it, I can tell it to go to particular frames and then play them, which is pretty bonkers. At the moment, it looks like the animation has just broken because it's just staying still. And if we look in layer properties, you can see it says value 1, right? So this is something that can be animated. If I change it from 1 to 15, it's going to show me what's on frame 15, and it's just going to hold there. You can see on the retime thing as well that it's, there you go, 15 is the one that is being held. So this is something that can be animated. You can tell something to play faster or slower as a result, or over and over again. So I'm going to set this up to just mirror reality. On frame 1, it's going to be 1. And then at the end of my animation, which is, what is that, on frame 41, I'm going to set it to 41. So that's now just replicating what already exists. Fades away like that. But now, rather than having to manage all of these layers and all of these frames and stuff like that, all I need to do is copy and paste the retime nodes keyframes instead. Yeah, so if I paste these over here, even though the character doesn't exist, nothing is exposed, nothing is over here at all. I paste that, and it's just going to play frame 1 to 41. So this is parented time. This is insane, right? Because now it's not copying and pasting the keyframes. It's referencing the keyframes. So if I go back and I change this first animation again, it's going to update it for every time it appears throughout my timeline, which is bonkers. Furthermore, I can decrease the length of this. So now it's going to play really fast. See that? It's going from frame 1 to 41 over a shorter period of time. Likewise, I can cause things to be slow-mo. So now it's going to play that animation really slowly. That's crazy. It takes entire rigged structures and just treats them like clips being referenced in a video editor. That's insane. Really, really cool. And probably where I'm going to leave this session today. I'm going to tidy up these working files off screen and then put them up on the Patreon as soon as I can. And I haven't really seen too many questions or interaction on the stream today, so we'll probably leave it there for now. I intend to be back next week with a similar stream of this caliber, hopefully be a